Hello, friends. Let's talk today about another Soviet writer, Vasily Grossmann. The name of this novel is Life and Fate. It was written in Russian. So, written in Soviet Union in 1959 by Vasily Grossmann, Life and Fate. It narrates the story of a family of a Soviet physicist, Viktor Shutrum, during the Patriotic War, which is depicted as the struggle between two comparable totalitarian states, a multifaceted novel. One of its main themes is the tragedy of the common people and who have to fight both the invaders and the totalitarian ism of their own state. So, The Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman. Basically, the genre of this novel is it is a historical novel, war, philosophical, and political fiction. Publication date 1980 and Soviet Union published. So, Vasily Grossman, a Ukrainian Jew, was rejected for military service in 1941. I'm telling you about the author, and became a correspondent of the Soviet military paper. He spent approximately 1,000 days on the front line, roughly 3 or 4 years of the conflict between the Germans and the Soviets. He was one of the first journalists to write about the genocide of Jewish people in Eastern Europe and was present at many famous battles. Life and Fate was his defining achievement. So it's writing in part motivated by guilt over the death of his mother, and Life and Fate is technically the second half of the author conceived two-part book under the same title, with the first half published in 1952 under the title For a Just Cause, although the first half written by Grossman during the rule of Joseph Stalin expresses loyalty to the regime. Life and Fate shows the political disillusion of the protagonist and sharply criticizes Stalinism. For that reason, the manuscript was censored in Soviet Union. So, Life and Fate is a sprawling account of a life on the Eastern Front with countless plot lines taking place simultaneously all across Russia and Eastern Europe. Although each story has a linear progression, the events are not necessarily presented in chronological order. Grossman will, for example, introduce a character, then ignore that character for hundreds of pages, and then return to recount events that took place the very next day. It is difficult to summarize the novel, but the plot can be boiled down to three basic plot lines. The Sheponiskov family, Stalingrad battle, and life in the prison camps of the Soviet Russia and Nazi Germany. Although Life and Fate is divided into three parts, each of these plot lines is featured in each section. Viktor Shutrum is a brilliant physicist who, with his wife Lyudmila and daughter Nadia, has been evacuated from Moscow to Kazan. He is experiencing great difficulty with its work as well as with his family. He receives a letter from his mother from inside a Nazi Jewish ghetto informing him that she is soon to be killed by the Germans. Lyudmila, meanwhile, goes to visit her son from her first marriage, Tolia, in an army hospital, but he dies before her arrival. When she returns to Kazan, she is extremely detached and seems still to be expecting Tolia's return. Victor finds himself engaging in anti-Soviet conversation at home of his colleague Sokolov, partly to impress Sokolov's wife Maria. He consistently compares political situation to physics and remarks that fascism, Nazism, and Stalinism are not so different. He later regrets these discussions out of fear that he will be denounced and indecision that plagues his decision making throughout the novel. Certainly, Victor makes a huge mathematical breakthrough solving the issue that had hindered his experiments. Victor's colleagues are slow to respond but eventually come to accept the genius of his discovery. After moving back to Moscow, however, the higher ups begin to criticize his discoveries as being anti Leninist and attacking his Jewish identity. Victor, however, refused to publicly repent and is forced to resign. He fears that he will be arrested, but then receives a call from Stalin himself, presumably because Stalin had sensed the military importance of nuclear research that completely and immediately reverses his fortune. Later, he signs a letter denouncing two innocent men and is subsequently racked by guilt. The last detail about Victor regard is unconsummated affair with Maria. The event recounted at Stalingrad Center on Yevgenia Shaposhnikova, Ludmila's sister, Krimov, her father husband, and Novikov, her lover. After recounting with Novikov, Yevgenia evacuates to Kubyshev. Novikov, the commander of Soviet Tank Corps, meets General Neudobovnov and political commissar Getmanov, both of whom are party hacks. Together they begin planning the counter-assault on Stalingrad. Novikov delays the start of assault for fear of unnecessarily sacrificing his men. Getmanov later denounced Novikov and he is summoned for trial, even though the tank attack was a complete success. Meanwhile, Krimov, a political commissar, is sent to investigate House 6-1, where a tiny group of soldiers have held back the German for weeks. Even though they are completely surrounded and cut off from all supplies, Krikov, the commanding officer, refused to send report to headquarters and is disdainful for Krimov's rhetoric. He later wounds Krimov in his sleep, causing him to be evacuated from the house. Soon after, House 6-1 is completely leveled by German bombs. Krimov, a staunch communist, is then accused of being a traitor and sent to Lubyanka prison in Moscow, where he is beaten and forced to confess. Yevgenia decides not to marry Novikov and goes to Moscow to try and visit Krimov. He receives a package from her and realizes that he still loves her, but may never be released from prison. The section that take place in the camp have few recurring characters, with the exception of Mostovskoy, an old Bolshevik who takes part in a plot to rebel against Germany, but is dismayed by the prevailing lack of faith in communism. His interrogator Liz asserts that fascism and communism are two sides of the same coin, which upset Mostovskoy greatly. He is later killed by the German for his part in uprising. In one scene, Sturmbannführer Liz tells Mostovskoy that both Stalin and Hitler are the leader of qualitatively new formation. When we look at each other's faces, we see not only a hated face, we see the mirror reflection. Don't you recognize yourself? Your strong will is in us. Grossman also focuses on Sophia Levinton, a Jewish woman on her way to a Nazi concentration camp. The final chapter introduces a set of characters who remain anonymous: an elderly widow observing her tenants, a wounded army officer recently discharged from hospital, his wife, and their young daughter. It is implied, however, that the officer returning to his family is Major Berzokin, a recurring character from Stalingrad, who is shown to be a kind man struggling to retain his humanity. Grossman described the type of Communist Party functionaries who blindly follow the party line and constitute the base for the oppressive regime. One such political worker, Sagyadek, maintained that entire families and villages intentionally starved themselves to death during the collectivization in the USSR. So this is the story of this novel, Life and Fate, by Vasily Grossmann, and I hope you will enjoy this. Thank you.